I'm Henry Simeon, Inspection Manager, a member of the Vice. I'm Adam Mega, IT Technician, a member of the
Sally M. Kamara.
Abdullah Kamara, Chairperson, LTA.
And for Frontline 2, Acting Consultation.
My name is Karen Hassan.
So we begin with, yes,
Lorenzo Lau, CEO of Shipping Liberia.
Presidente da Telecommunications,
Robin Silu,
Julius Senate Loop, IT Chair, Natal.
Alicia Wyatt Diggs, CTO, Chief Technology Officer for Cola Cash.
Monique Yap Scott, Chief Marketing Officer for Cola Cash.
David Ujo, Managing Director of PM.
Pamela Elchos, Tama Corporation.
Zach Lawful, Iwana.
So I now introduce our IT Chairperson of the Board of Commissioners, Liberia Telecommunications Authority, Honorable Abdullah Kamara, for opening remarks.
Good morning, everybody. I usually say I'm not good at public speaking, so I'm not going to be scripted. So I'll just give a brief intro. So, for those that I think I see most of the people on this side that were present yesterday at Marble Point Hotel with respect to the formation of this big body with the Central Bank of Liberia. I'm sure most of you will recall my comments with respect to how we see this market. Value-added services, I think the fintechs are pretty much the first well-organized group that are involved with value-added services. As we see it, there will be more later on. We're trying to organize the market so that we can have more players. Pretty much, in short, value-added services, any additional service besides regular browsing and regular telephone call and SMS. So any other service on top of your mobile device or offered on top of the mobile device are referred to as value-added services. We are also aware that the MNOs have been dominant. We have a duopoly in that space, especially with respect to our numbering resources. We have numbers that we have assigned to the MNO, and they generously reassign it to their mobile money services or businesses without any real approval from the LTA. But it is even more troubling when smaller players want to have access to USSDs or short codes that they will have to go through a tedious process or very expensive one. So this barrier we want to remove. We want to ensure that all players, including the MNOs themselves, are operating fairly so that we have a vibrant market, so that we have more innovation. I can assure you that once this class regulation is enforced, trust me, you'll see more activities and more innovations. See a lot of young people coming up with ideas, and now they will have to come to the proper location to get access to numbering resources, which will be required by MNOs to also execute in practice. And this is our intent. We hope, as usual, LTA, this is a normal process for us. We're very familiar with it. For most of you, probably the first time with LTA. They will explain the process, how this will be done and achieved. We hope we can do this all in a few weeks, conclude, the board can approve, and then we can all make the sector actually more vibrant and great. I hope we all will have good discussions. Please provide your input. I know some people being this field for some time. I see my friend David. We appreciate ideas. Those that are operating in other markets. We appreciate ideas to help us, guide and get a maximum out of these regulations that will be put in place today. So finally, I will say welcome, and I hope you all have a very fruitful conversation and make sure that the market is good. Yes, sir. Thank you. She prepared me a nice speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, for that splendid remark. So we will all sit and relax as our vast team prepare for our presentation.
Thank you, Lafayette. We want to first of all apologize for the repeated changes in venue, lots of logistical challenges at some places, and it kept forcing us to embarrassingly get back to you with a new venue. But we're glad that you are all here, and we also want to say thank you to the management of the Colony Hotel for pulling out all the stops at very, very short notice to have us here today. With the support of the Board of Commissioners, this team, and other specialists across the LTA, extensive research and benchmarking across a number of countries has led us to present to you today what the LTA believes are two game-changing regulations to protect consumer welfare, establish effective competition, innovation, and growth in a dynamic telecommunications market, and to create opportunity for Liberian firms to more fully participate in the Liberian telecommunications ecosystem. The LTA plans to publish two new regulations. The regulations on national numbering resources, we'll call them the number regulations, and the regulations on the wholesale access to telecoms networks for provision of value-added services. That's a mouthful, so we'll call these regulations the VAS regulations going forward. Why do we need these? Why do we need numbers and VAS regulations? To prevent MNOs, the mobile network operators, who have significant market power, from exercising unfair control of numbering resources and discriminatory access to networks and subscribers. This is a public consultation, so it needs to be interactive, but because we are so many in the room, if you have substantive questions, please take a note and we'll respond to them in the end. But while I'm going through this, if there's a point that I'm making that needs immediate clarification, please interrupt me. Okay? So unfair control of numbering resources. The chairperson mentioned USD and short codes. Up to now, the MNOs, the two major MNOs, have controlled these numbers. And in a little bit, we'll see how in some instances they've exercised unfair control of these resources. This is the big picture. And I guess this is why all of you are here. We're talking about a combined total of 4.4, and right now it's probably a little more than that, 4.4 million telecommunications subscribers, active telecommunications subscribers between the two networks. These 4 million plus subscribers are basically captured in the networks of the individual MNOs. We're talking Orange, we're talking MTN. To get to these subscribers, this potential market, you need to get through the MNOs. Who are you? You're a fintech.
I would delete every app on my phone for this. It's called Chatbot AI.
Digital financial service firms, e-commerce firms, e-marketing. In today's world, the traditional media, radio, television, would not be as effective as getting directly to the mobile phone that everyone carries in their hand. To do that, you need a USSD, a short code. Between you and the MNOs, you need to develop something called an API, an interface that connects your servers to their servers. To be able to connect to these 4 million subscribers, connect to the phones in their hands, whether it's a smartphone or whether it's a feature phone. What we're trying to do here with these two regulations is to make it easier for non-telecommunications businesses and services and firms to gain access to that potential market. We're trying to lower what we call the barriers of access, the barriers of entry to the MNO network. We'll give you an example. GN Bank, you all would remember GN Bank, had a license from the Central Bank of Liberia to conduct mobile money business. GN Bank approached an MNO and asked for a short code, a USD code, star 545 hash, to be able to do his business. They could not get that code. They wrote to the LTA, they copied the Central Bank of Liberia, complaining that the MNO was stifling the mobile money business of the bank. GN Bank is no longer in business, and why? These were the conditions imposed by the MNO. Pay the MNO $300,000 a year for the use of that number, star 545 hash. Whatever revenue was generated from the use of that short code, gave 80% to that MNO. In addition, every time your customer, the GM Bank customer, used that code, that customer will be charged $5. These conditions were pretty much unacceptable to the bank. It was non-feasible. They could not do business. I think they sold off their business to, and there's no longer a GM Bank in Monrovia. A further example. A company called M-Pesa Liberia. They also wanted to do the mobile money business. They also got a license from the Central Bank of Liberia to do that business. They needed a short code, a USSD number. They wrote to the LTA, and this was, 2 years ago. Please give us a number. We understand that the law says the numbers are under your control. The LTA could do nothing but refer them to the MNOs who up to now control these numbers. M-Pesa Liberia still has not received a short code. M-Pesa Liberia has not started business. It's for these reasons that the LTA has identified two bottlenecks in this system, two competitive challenges. One, the control of the numbers. So, if your competitor controls the numbers, it's understandable that he will want to prevent you from entering the business. So the LTA wants to take back these numbers. The LTA wants to ensure that in keeping with the Telecommunications Act, all Liberia's national numbering resources, including these short codes, are centralized under the control of the LTA. Another objective of the numbering regulations, of course, is to promote competition. One of our guiding principles at the LTA, one of our key functions is to seek consumer welfare. We believe that consumer welfare is best sought if there are many competitors in a level playing field providing competitive services. This should ensure better quality of service, better quality of experience, better pricing for the consumer. We believe that the numbering regulations will also encourage new investment in the sector and will encourage the efficient allocation and use of these very scarce numbering resources. And later on, we'll show you just how scarce they are. What are these numbers and how are they used? So we are all familiar with our regular telephone numbers. We all have one. You buy a SIM card, it's activated on the network, you have a telephone number. These are numbers that the MNOs receive from the LTA. But the other numbers will group as special numbering resources. These short codes, 3 digits, 4 digits, 5 digits, 6 digits. These have, up to now, been controlled by the MNOs. How are they used? You're familiar with toll-free numbers. You pay for a number and your customers call you without paying. You pay for that cost. Machine-to-machine numbers, 2 machines talking to each other. For instance, you have a fleet of petroleum tankers around the country. You want to know where they are. You put a device in each truck. That device speaks through the telecommunications network to servers and computers in your office, to 2 machines talking to each other, location-based services. We're talking premium numbers. A common example is Big Brother Liberia, for instance, where you're asking callers to call in to vote for a preferred candidate, and they will pay more for that call, and that price that they're paying that's extra, they divide the cost of that call between themselves and the MNO. Those are premium numbers. Much of our conversation today will focus though on USSD codes, short codes, numbers that that will be used to generate USSD codes. Why are USSD codes so important? Because it doesn't matter whether you have a smartphone or a feature phone, your message can reach a consumer. The vast majority of that 4.4 million, those 4.4 million active subscribers have feature phones. They can't access a TipMe app, or an e-wallet app, or BNB app. They need to use a USSD. They need to dial star something 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 hash to access your services. That cuts a large market away from your business. So what are the key points in this numbering regulations? What are we trying to do? All these national numbering resources, these short codes, will revert to LTA control when these regulations take effect. Additionally, the mobile network operators would not be eligible for these short codes unless these codes are to be used for their core services. What are their core services? Voice, data, SMS, but voice, and for the internal workings of their centers, subscriber support, or for national emergency, health, and security. For instance, if the police is 911, that's a short code. It will be common to all networks, and it will be free of charge to the MNOs. But apart from these numbers, the MNOs would be prohibited from acquiring short codes. Another key point in the numbers regulations is that you need a license to get access to these numbers, or you need to acquire these numbers from someone who has a license. These are the short codes we're talking about. The LTA has revised its national numbering plan to now include consideration of these, what we call special numbering resources, short codes. Under that plan, only short codes between 3 digits and 6 digits will be recognized and accepted. So when we say scarce national numbering resources, this is what we need. These 3 digits, there are only 1,000 of them. There are only 1,000 of these numbers. Hilda. There are only 1,000 of these numbers, and they are very valuable because why short code? They're easy to remember. Instead of a long telephone number to call a business or to perform a function, you have only 3 digits: 333, 555, 666, 111. So they are very valuable. The 4 digits, there are 10,000 of them. The 5 digits, there are 100,000 of them. 6 digits, there are only 1 million. So those were the key points in the numbering regulations. So we solved one problem that we identified: the access to numbers and to centralize the control of these numbers. But the other problem is, even if you have the number, how would you get access to those 4.4 million potential customers? How will you gain access to the MNO's network? To solve that problem, the LTA has developed the Value-Added Services Regulations, the VAS regulations. What are these? Or let's start. What is VAS? What do we consider VAS to be? Non-telecommunication services. That is, services coming from industries outside of telecommunications. Fintech, digital financial services, marketing, sales, news and information, education. All these services that are not traditional or core telecommunication services wanting access to a telecommunications network. So in a very formal way, and this is a lot of words, we say that when these non-telecommunication services use telecommunications protocols such as the USSD, applications, services, and platforms to transmit their content, their cache content, their alert content, their whatever content over the public telecommunications network, that is the network run and operated by the MNOs, then we, LTA, deem them to be value-added services for telecommunications consumers. That's an important point, so I hope we're clear on that, what we call value-added services. These non-telecommunication services, international remittances, mobile money, mobile banking. There's a lot of business in music downloads, music streaming, video streaming, mobile sales and marketing. I mentioned earlier that the traditional radio and television are not necessarily the most effective medium for advertising anymore. An ad comes on the radio, you're driving, an ad comes on the radio, I can turn my radio off, I can change the station. But an SMS message comes to your phone, Whether you read it immediately or you read it later on, but the tendency is that most of us will read that message. And if you can get that message to 4.4 million potential customers, we believe that your advertising budget will have more value. So that's e-marketing, mobile sales, political messaging, polling and surveys, news and sports, a whole range of services. In education, there are value-added services that allow parents who have students in schools to keep track of the students' performance, their grades, their this, their this, their this, their this, in agriculture, in health, in any field you can think about. Value-added services moving through using the public telecommunications network to get to the mobile device in your hand. This is what we call value-added services. So, we've solved one problem, the numbers. We solve another problem, or we're beginning to understand how we're going to solve the other problem of gaining access to the telecommunications network. In the VAS regulations, in the draft regulations, this is the structure that we see. These are the players that we see in the VAS market. The customers, the mobile network operators are very important. They are key. They run the networks. They spent millions of dollars on establishing these networks across the country. Then we are introducing other players. The VAS aggregator. What's his business? He doesn't provide a service of his own, but he's able, he's able to make arrangements with the mobile network operator to get volume discounts. He's able to collect small traffic from banks, from supermarkets, from people who don't have large volumes to be able to do business directly with the mobile network operators, because the MNOs have standards as well. It's not anyone who will walk up and say, hey, carry my traffic. Your business may be too small for them to use their resources. So the aggregator aggregates all of that small traffic, gets a discount from the MNOs, okay, and passes that traffic through to any MNO. That's his business. But he will be restricted from doing anything else except that. Then in this ecosystem, we see another group called VAS content and application providers. They have their own content. They have their own applications. It is likely that they may be regulated by another government agency, such as the central bank. We see businesses such as mobile money providers, and many of you fintech with sufficient traffic to fall in that category. If you connect directly to an MNO, you need an LTA license. If you connect directly to the MNO, you need an LTA license. You don't have to get a license. You can go through an aggregator. But if you connect directly, if you integrate with the MNO, you need a license. Then we have another general category in this VAS market structure that we call the VAS content and application developers. These are people who maybe they have a franchise agreement with a music provider in Nigeria, and they want to give the opportunity for those 4.4 million customers to download music, or download movies, or ringtones, or just about anything you can think about. Okay? So they don't need a license. They pass their traffic, their content through an aggregator or through a content and application provider. This is the basic structure that we believe everyone can fit into. Before this consultation is over, we would like to hear from many of you here where you feel you fit. Let's look a little bit more into this vast market and how the LTA believes that it can compel the MNOs to give access to you. So the LTA has identified a market. That is the market for wholesale access to MNO networks. Normally, the way the LTA works, we can't just pass regulations. We can't just do anything. We have to identify a potential market failure. We have to identify a market, and we have to be sure that that market is relevant for what we call our ex-ante regulation. To regulate it before something happens, before the market failure occurs. So that market is this wholesale market access to MNO networks. We say wholesale, and in the sense that it's between one service provider to another service provider. Whereas when we say retail, we're talking about the service provider to a consumer, to a subscriber, to an end user. So in that wholesale market, where you want access to the MNO network, that's a wholesale arrangement. In order to make this work, the LTA in these regulations is declaring that the MNOs are dominant in their control of essential facilities. What is that essential facility? Their network. They are 100% dominant in their own network with respect to you. To get access, they can charge you the $300,000 that was charged to GM. They can tell you, give me 80% of your revenue. Every time you send a USSD across the network, they can tell me, pay me whatever they want you to pay them. They are dominant in that network. Their subscribers, the MTN subscribers to the MTN network, the Orange subscribers in the Orange network, the Telco subscribers in the Telco network. The Telco is dominant there, Orange is dominant, MTN is dominant. The LTA is declaring them to be essential facilities. And this is in accordance with the LTA regulation, licensing and authorization and interconnection regulations. We've tried to make sure that everything we are doing with these regulations meets legal standards. So, what are the conditions for ensuring that you have access? We're saying they must give you non-discriminatory access. VAS providers, the aggregators, the content providers, they must give them non-discriminatory access. What does that mean? They cannot pick and choose who they will give access to. There's a time frame, because you could request access, and the MNO could say, okay, I'm reviewing your application for access, and they take 1 year, and you're still waiting. So a further obligation is that they must respond to you within 30 days. They must respond to you within 30 days. Additionally, there are charges. They charge for that integration, that connection, for developing that API. Their charge for that must be cost-based. So they must show evidence to the LTA that there's a cost for doing this work, and then they add a reasonable margin on top. What the regulations require is that once a year, people with essential facilities, and not only the MNOs, the aggregators as well, must supply to the LTA their tariff sheet. How much do you charge for this? What are your volume discounts? What is the charge for integration? If someone is running USSD traffic, how much do you charge for every time? What's your monthly charge for 200,000 USSD sessions? What do you charge for 1 million SMS occurrences? LTA needs to make sure that these things are cost-based, cost plus. We believe these measures are the key measures among many others that the LTA is imposing because we've declared them to be dominant. We've declared them to be in possession of essential facilities. So we talked about that if you connect directly to the MNO, you need a license. What are these license conditions? The LTA is proposing that a VAS license will be for 5 years. It will have a validity of 5 years. It will be on individual, non-facility based. By non-facility, we mean you don't have a network. Maybe you have a server or computer, maybe your information is stored in the cloud somewhere, but you don't have a network in the sense that we consider a network. So it's a 5-year individual non-facility based license. You need it if you directly integrate with the MNO, if you directly connect to the MNO. The procedures for applying for such a license follow the standard procedures that the LTA has for applying for any telecommunications license. Business registration, tax clearance, the usual things. And in addition to that, if you're fintech, for instance, or you provide financial services, as many of you in this room do, you should have a central bank license. We'll need to see evidence that you are authorized to provide financial services in Liberia before the LTA would consider giving you a value-added service license to provide those financial services to telecommunications subscribers. We have proposed an application fee of $1,200 for that license and an annual license fee of $5,000. These figures are taken directly from the LTA's regulations that were established in 2009 or 2015, amended in 2015. So this isn't just from the top of our heads. What other conditions? We said MNOs are not eligible to get short codes except the short codes they need for their own business or customer support. So we are also saying that they're not eligible for a VAS license. We're trying to break up what we call the vertical integration of the MNOs. So they sell access to you on the wholesale level. In some cases, they own VAS companies, mobile money firms. So they're competing on the retail level. If they also can own aggregators or do VAS, then the competitive landscape becomes uneven. And a competitive landscape is the LTA's key concern. So the VAS regulations say MNOs are not eligible for a license. If you are a VAS aggregator or a VAS content provider, you cannot receive subsidies, cross subsidies, from another parent company, subsidiary, or affiliate. What we're seeing is if you are a mobile money firm owned by an MNO and you have a VAS license as a content provider, you are prohibited from receiving cross subsidies from your parent company. So we're seeing both of them, the MNOs and the application and content providers, are barred from full or partial ownership of aggregator companies. So if one of you firms sitting in this room, let's take B&B, decided to get a VAS license to be an application and content provider, you could not own an aggregator company. Further, in the interest and in keeping with the telecommunications law, that the LTA should try to encourage Liberian participation in the telecommunications sector, we are requiring that if you want a VAS license, you must show evidence of a minimum 20% Liberian ownership. Minimum 20% Liberian ownership. We're almost done, folks. To ensure that we are in control of what's happening with all of this, we want to put in place a monitoring system. We want to monitor the growth and performance of the market. We want to know where the traffic is moving. One of the objectives of these regulations is to ensure financial inclusion. By financial inclusion, that services are not merely concentrated here in Monrovia and in large urban centers, but that these services get out to our people in rural areas. So where the traffic flows and trends, we need to know. We need to monitor compliance by everyone in the vast value chain with consumer protection provisions. We need to monitor compliance with quality of service provisions. And we need to look out for telecommunications offenses as detailed in the Telecommunications Act. So, what are the arrangements going forward? We are now at about the end of this consultation period. We've been talking about this with a number of stakeholders, with the MNOs in great detail. We've been talking with the central bank. We've been talking with the Liberia Bankers Association. We've been talking with the Chambers of Commerce. We've been talking with everybody who wants to listen to us about these two regulations. The law requires us to do so, to take account of your comments, your input, before we finalize these regulations. We are about at the end of the road with the consultations. After this time, we'll be compiling everything we've learned from everybody we've spoken to. We'll do a report, send it back out to you, give you some time to make a final comment, and then the LTA will finalize these regulations. After the regulations are signed by the Board of Commissioners, we want to give a transitional period. The LTA has no interest in disrupting the market. We have no interest in doing things where people have contractual relationships right now that things are just disrupted. So we want to allow a minimum 3-month transitional period. What happens during this period? If you need a VAS license, apply to the LTA for a VAS license. Get it. If you need numbers, apply to the LTA for those numbers. Get those numbers during this transitional period. Because the numbers are first come, first served. If you wait and somebody else gets your preferred number, sorry. If people have existing contracts, for instance. So right now the MNOs have contracts with various parties for numbers. And the contracts are normally for a 12-month period. So if someone signs a contract today that's valid until next year this time, what happens when these regulations come into place? So all of these considerations are things that this team sitting at this table has spent a considerable amount of time considering. And we want to give an opportunity during this transitional period for all of these things to be worked out, for all of these adjustments to be made. So a core team will be there to support anyone requiring a license, to walk you through, to talk you through. If you require a number, how is this done? How can we help? That's what we are there to do. So, we talked about the impact of these regulations, that all these codes, once these regulations are approved, will be under the LTA's control for the first time in this country's history. That we expect that the government's financial inclusion policies will be furthered, and we expect to see the growth of the fintech sector of the market. We hope to see many more Liberian firms participating in telecommunications. And one of our greatest impacts that we want to see is the bringing down of barriers to access to the MNO networks. When we have effective competition, when there are many players in the market, prices should be better for consumers, the quality of service should be better, the quality of experience should be better. So we have some questions for you. Do you see these regulations hurting or helping your business? Where would you fit in that value chain, that market structure that we talked about? Do you see yourself as an aggregator? Do you see yourself as a content provider? Do you see yourself as a content developer? Have you ever tried to gain access to the MNO network? What happened? Were you successful? If not, why not? What terms and conditions were you offered? We want to hear from you. So we're hoping that during this process, as we talk and consult, you can give us some of this information. Everything you tell us informs how we finalize these regulations. But we were hoping also that after this, you can make a formal submission to us by sending an email to consult@lta.gov.lr. If you want access to the actual draft regulations, send an email here. We'll send you a link to a Google folder where you can download all the documents, the draft regulations, the consultation document, and everything pertaining to this process. You can ask questions, you can give us your suggestions, but do this quickly. We are in the process of finalizing these draft regulations. So, what questions do you have for us? Maybe they'd like to come back on this. We should say that we have Alfonso and Hilda taking notes of your questions and our responses. Questions will be responded to by anyone on this team, depending on the specific area, and whichever member of the team feels best wanting to something. We have a question. Please identify yourself, your institution, and then proceed.
Ready to stand up?
Please.
Sure.
Oh, sorry, ma'am. Just 1 second.
Sure.
While we were presenting, people walked in, and we just wanted to know who they are and maybe give them opportunity to introduce themselves. Please.
So I'm Maxwell, no CEO for Orange Money.
Orange Money. That's everyone?
So I'm Inan Jala, solution architect for
E-Wally.
Wilson Chofidi.
Where?
Wilson Chofidi, E1.
E-Wally.
I'm Calvin Sim from Tech 231.
Tech 231. Welcome, everybody. Maybe you want to introduce yourself.
My name is Liberia M. Yamalo. I'm the Customer Affairs Manager at LTA.
Thank you. Please, ma'am, continue.
My name is Felicia Wyatt Diggs, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Total Cash. The question I have is, I noticed, first of all, thank you so much for this opportunity for us, because it was something that all of the fintech, I'm pretty sure, are very happy about, especially us. The question I have is that I noticed that one of the things that is missing out of this slide is security for are there any measures being put in place for security? Because one of the things security issue in the country is that I know it was a while back there was an app that came to the country and people were customers of food, and a lot of the things because of the bridge of security. So what measures are being put in place now to help with security with these new laws you have?
You're talking cybersecurity, data
Cybersecurity,
protection,
yes.
and
Yes.
all of that.
Yes.
Anybody?
Public data protection and consumer data protection.
Okay, we'll take note and
Thank
then
you.
respond. Somebody else to respond?
Yeah, just to respond to your question.
Sure.
Currently at the LT, we are in the process of rolling out our national cybersecurity programs. First of all, if you meet those criteria, whether you are an aggregator or you are a vast content provider, you will have to meet certain credit-found security parameters at the LTA. We will get you based on those parameters. And if you are qualified, then you can provide services as an aggregator or as a vast content provider. So we are also considering the security aspect as well, even though it wasn't talked about yet.
In addition to that, on a more national level, the draft cybersecurity law and policies are currently being consulted upon, and this is huge threats we face. So this is a big concern for everyone. And apart from those threats, there are also threats to consumers. Unsolicited messaging, people needing the ability to opt in or opt out of receiving your promotional messages, many considerations. And some of these things are handled in regulations that the LTA is currently, maybe Lee will speak on these, consumer protection regulations that the LTA is currently in the process of rolling out. Perhaps Lee would want to comment on.
Well, so just to follow up, we are currently in the face of launching the consumer protection regulations. But the public consultation that we're having now, which will be taking place, and all these concerns will be addressed. So we look forward to stakeholders' input as always.
I have a question to follow up.
Sure.
Yeah.
As far as this is concerned, what happens to those providers, basically who we are, they already have a consistent contract with these MNOs? Does that change the contract we have already with MNOs? How does that work?
It depends on what sort of contract it is. So, say you have a contract to provide mobile banking through an MNO, and you have a contract that's still in existence. They paid you for it. And maybe they've given you a number or a short code. You need to make sure you come to the LTA if you want to maintain that number, first of all, and make an application for it, if you are qualified to apply for it. Okay. If you are not, you need to make sure that someone who has a license can apply for that. The contract terms is a very tricky thing, but in anything like this, a new law passing, a new regulation passing, there has to be a cut-off point. Okay? So we would look to see that during this transitional period, all of these issues, specific issues, case-by-case issues, that we can sit with the contract parties and work them out. Council?
In addition, there are provisions in almost every contract that provides for migrating to this kind of development that were not in place at the time of the formation of the contracts. And those provisions include usually new laws made by the government. So these regulations, when they come to force, they automatically modify your existing contract, and the parties are required to migrate, to conform to the regulations.
Yeah. So don't also forget that I think with these regulations, indeed you have to change your agreement with the service provider, because they themselves will have to comply with these regulations. So probably they will even tell you that the terms and conditions will have to be included. Additionally, he talked about the specific numbers you desire. So one very important thing is once you have that number, it's going across both platforms or as many platforms as possible. So you don't have to have 3, 2, 1 here, and then you went on the other side and say, oh, it's one already, so you have to take 2, 4, 5. And then for your customers, your messaging now for your customers, 2, 4. So these are some of the things that you have.
Thank you, Chair. Talk to us, please. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Julius Luke, IT National Chairman of NATECO. We want to start by thanking our new IT commissioners. We believe, NATECO believes that your presence in the sector hugely contribute to sector development. But our question comes back from another point, because sometimes back, when there was a merger between whatever was a merger or a takeover between a particular service provider and Commune, we came out to say, hey, with the telecommunications sector need more actors, especially service providers. A market at the size of 5 million people to have only 2 key players. It will affect competition. But then we were not listened to. They went ahead, and then Commune was taken out of the market. Now we have the 2 players. In the Gambia, a smaller market of just almost 2 million people, they have 4 players. You have Gamcell, state-owned, you have QNet, you have Africell, and you have Commune. Over the years, the LTA has been very instrumental into bringing a lot of good policies, but unfortunately, because the market in Liberia is dominated or overtaken by 2 players, it affects everything that the LTA comes out to bring. Okay, so my question is this. Firstly, I want to know, how do we move? Because as long as the market is still being held by these two players, MTN and Orange, there will be a lot of stuff. So how do we move from having 5 million consumers or more with the two players, and then you have 2 million somewhere that got 4 players? Which government entity is responsible at least to put up a bid that another player, not a player that will come again and go under these guys, but another key player that comes so that there's going to be an open competition. But as you see, the competition isn't open. There is no competition in the telecommunications sector. It's just something, every time we have the same things repeated over and over. So the market is somehow being hijacked by these people, if I would say.
I think it's important to register, since we have the media here, that I would rather put it as 2 major players, because there is also the telco in the business as well. Perhaps favor 2 major players.
And other licensees who for various reasons are not yet active. Okay? So there are, I think, two others.
Jamcell and Starcell.
So there are 2 other licensees for some reason that are not yet active.
Jamcell, JAMCELL, and Starcell. And then those that are licensed by the LTA, but are not operational right now.
If I may talk a little bit in support of the point, it is true we have more, but I think in terms of visibility, and like Commissioner was saying, the market share for the other 2 is pretty much 98%, maybe more. And so we pretty much have a monopoly. And the others haven't started yet. So for the end user, you don't see them. I think only LTA people know the change right now.
In addition to that, the LTA, beyond issuing regulated licenses for multiple players to come in the market, it's not enough to have multiple players in the market as soon as it's competitive. You have multiple players with different market power, as we see in Liberia. So currently the LTA has commissioned a cost market study to evaluate this market in line with your issue, competition, to make sure that where there is dominance, is regulated. If the market is seeing unfair control, regulated. So even if you have 5 players, it doesn't automatically translate into a fair competitive market space. LTA will continue to assess market conditions and where necessary, regulate.
And this is what we're trying to do with the VAS. You've seen some of the conditions that we've put into place to prevent what we call this vertical integration. One powerful dominant player controlling everything. Controlling the wholesale, controlling the retail, controlling everything. So we try to put in place restrictions. And these are the sorts of measures that attract other investors to your market when they can be sure that your regulatory regime is predictable, is fair, okay, and that coming in their interest will be protected. But it's a very, very important point that you raised, and it's a point that everyone in this, at this table, have considered a great deal from a position of principle. Can you have effective competition with only 2 players? So that is something that, from a theoretical point of view, is something that we are all discussing and grappling with, and attempting to create a sort of enabling environment to encourage others to come in. Like the way we're trying to encourage others to come into the VAS market, to make it a little bit more vibrant. We see maybe, 4, 5, 6 fintech firms. Many of you are offering the same services, but perhaps we should begin to see other fintech offering other services, other value-added services. The convergence now between telecommunications and finance is as such, the lines are becoming blurred, okay? So the concept of co-regulation, you are regulated by the central bank. If you get a VAS license, you will also be regulated by the LTA. So things are getting a little blurred, and we expect to see much more of this as we go down the road. I saw a hand.
Yes, and a few remarks. First of all, as we consider regulating the VAS regime, it will be interesting to consider other alternative solutions that are going to impact that. So we feel the cost of this migration to other markets, and we are moving away from the short codes to WhatsApp solutions. So we need to consider the costing model of the WhatsApp solutions to your USSD costing model you are proposing. That must be considered. That's number one. Number two, she raised a very good point about the contract with MNOs. If you take the contract away from the MNO, you are taking away revenue. My support as an MNO to the aggregator must be paid for. So I'm going to be charging for my support, not the cost of the USSD. So she's going to incur double costs as a business. We need to consider that cost implication on the aggregator model we are setting up. The third one is on the aggregator solution. Today as a market, these two big players in the market, we do have the platforms that enable aggregator solution setups. For example, are they open API platforms? Are they single integration platforms? That must be considered. Otherwise, the cost implication of the VAS license charges will be too unbearable for the small fintechs to come into the market. I must also add that competition is not driven by law, it's driven by consumer behavior. Nobody restricts people from entering into a marketplace. They enter when there's P&L opportunity. The two big players here are not having a good P&L. We pulled out of Uganda, we put out another market. Today, Orange is out of Ghana, Vodafone is out. Other big players are opening out of the markets because it's not profitable. And we require a big muscle to roll out 1,000+ cell sites, one at $250,000 across the country. So if you don't have that big muscle and you don't have a healthy P&L staring at you in the face, you don't throw in that money. So we go into board meetings, we discuss, we submit proposals, and we say, sorry, this country, strike it out. And we are at the crossroads of some of these decisions. So it's not that we are trying to take over the market, but we are trying to justify our spend also by the volume of business we get from the markets. At this point, it's not looking good. Because of the size of the market, I'm already seeing. So at that point, we need to be fair with that as well to say it's not a regulator, it's not regulation that's restricting others entering the market. But the P&L opportunity does not make it enticing enough for other players to come in. What we expect is that the regulation might be such that we'll be encouraging with support for the new ones that come in to rather be able to grow. So the charging model might be such that we'll be encouraging for new fintechs to come in. I wonder how a fintech can compete with Orange with 2-3 million subscribers in that same space. So the model might be such that the new ones must have a different approach to their costing or their tariffs, and the existing ones must have a different approach. It's possible. These are some of the comments that I think we should have to consider in our deliberations on the VAS law, not forgetting the technology move. We are encouraging aggregators from our platform. However, what we see, which is sometimes seen as a hindrance by the MNO, is a reality. They submit a lot of applications. My first thing I look at is for the commercial viability of that idea. We look at it and realize that if I spend man hours to do that integration, the commercial viability is zero. I'll put it off my table. I won't even look at it. And that's the reality of what is happening. We get a lot of brokers coming in, but the commercial viability is zero. Everybody's talking about fintech. We see guys saying we deliver food. Jumia and Global is closed up in markets in Africa. And somebody wants to launch it here. So we look at the viability of the proposal. It's not a commercially viable proposal. So we don't take it at all. So it's not a resistance from the MNOs to give us short codes or give these integrations. But we don't see it commercially viable. So we'd rather spend the man hours on doing the ones that are commercially viable for us. That's where we have this situation. So our another appeal will be for the fintechs to also make sure that the ideas and the requests are driven by commercially viable propositions behind them. Because that's the first thing we look at before we agree to either integrate you or not. And in that way, we'll be able to integrate more people. But the more people we have, the better it is for us. Because then we get mass scale revenue coming up with small margins for us to keep afloat as a business. So these are some of my comments that I think I want to put out.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that. I'm hoping that we receive an extensive input from Orange.
Yes.
Some of these comments weren't reflected in that, but they are well taken. But just to comment briefly on some of the things you said. First of all, costing, loss of revenue, you said. I don't see what revenue you're losing, apart from the cost of the code itself. Nothing that we've spoken about can happen without the MN code. Your cost for your tiering, volume tiering, cost for the movement of traffic, if you happen to have a monthly maintenance cost, whatever cost you're charging to your customers now, continue to charge. If they are cost plus, if they are cost based, continue to charge. That revenue continues to come to you. We want you to continue to make money. We do not want to disrupt your business. Okay? But the numbers, if you as Orange, if you have not put up obstacles, other MNOs have. Our job is to bring down those barriers and those potential areas of anti-competitive behavior. You mentioned something else about what the viability of proposals. We want to take that headache away from you. You are a busy man. Let those small proposals not come to your desk. Let them go to an aggregator. Let the aggregator who has 10 million USSD sessions per month come to you. Not that small businessman. Let them go to the aggregator. Move that headache. Concentrate on your core business. Push your core business. Let them compete. This is what we're seeing. So these regulations, we don't believe in any way take any revenue away from. Yes, if you charge per number, if someone comes to you and they want a 4-digit voice code and you charge $300 or whatever you charge per year, you may no longer make that $300. But that person is coming to you. And in fact, if it's voice, which is part of your core service, you can continue to supply that number to somebody to do voice services, because voice is part of your core structure. We've had extensive discussions with Orange, your technical team. Maybe you would be in marketing or Orange money. So we understand that Orange money operates in a number of countries where you have multiple providers of mobile money services. Liberia would not be the first and wouldn't be the last market where mobile money, digital financial services is expanded and everyone can compete. You would have advantages. You have first mover advantages and so forth. But there are certain things that you have to allow the competition. You have your mobile money store, I have my mobile money store. Okay, who competes? What do we compete on? Quality of service, the additional. What can I add on? What makes me better than the other player? These are all the things we're thinking about. We don't want to disrupt your business. We want your business to continue to prosper. All we're saying is allow others to get a little piece of this pie.
I think my comment was rather on the side of the fintech community, not on our side. Because they are small businesses, the costing becomes double. I'll continue to charge them for my services. Now they're going to pay for a license fee they were not paying before. That's what I'm saying. So if you put the two together, now the cost
it's not double. It's not double. And I'll tell you why it won't be double. I'll tell you why it won't be double. Say that small fintech paid you what? $500 a month. Okay? Now, pays you $500 a month now for whatever service. But you can no longer provide that service directly to that. He has to go to an aggregator. But that aggregator has come to you for that same service and is able to negotiate for you to give it to him for $350 a month because of his volume. So he goes back to that same customer and says, oh, okay, give it to you for the same $500. The aggregator makes his $150. Okay? Or even $100 or whatever, or $50 profit. But the customer, that gas provider, doesn't pay double. Because the job of the aggregator to make money, he has to negotiate discounts. And right now, Orange provides tiering volume discounts. If your business is between 0 and 200, say USD per month, pay this price. If it's 1 million, you pay this price. The aggregator, who should have a bigger volume, should be able to negotiate that. One point you struck that is of concern to us, and we're thinking about this, is the idea of the technical capability of the aggregators. Now, in any new thing, in any change, there's going to be a period of roughness, of things will not move as smoothly as you would want. So, in that situation, and in the realm of flexible regulation, if the LTA finds that after the transition, and this thing is supposed to go live, there's no viable aggregator in the market, why can't the LTA give an order or notice and say, in the interim, let the MNOs continue doing this? We do not want to disrupt the market. There is no intention to disrupt the market. But we need to hear from you. We made an attempt to speak directly to Orange Money. We have been unable to until this time. Okay, we've talked to your GSM side, and they gave us the impression that since we had talked to them, it was sufficient. But now I'm hearing from you it's good, and I'm hoping that we can continue this conversation. I don't know if we responded. Yes, Commissioner.
No, I think you did. All right, so I think you made a very brilliant, I think it's a brilliant point. Well, first of all, there's an issue of establishing a national ownership of a resource, which for me is key here. So all these numbers in our jurisdiction, the numbers are actually nationally owned. As it stands, the MNOs seem to be the regulated for the drivers. You see the imbalance. So with this regulation, when I reaffirm about it strengthens the national ownership, which for me is very key. Because LTA, the national government through LTA, should be ensuring a level playing field. How are you going to do that when you're not even in charge of the resources that belong to you? We have no idea when MTN gave a short code to somebody, and maybe the only thing we hear maybe is doing advertisement or doing promotional jingles. Then LTA says, oh, there's a number that belongs to me. It has just been given to. So firstly, is to bring under control that ownership, and I also think we should respond to the issue of the commitments that are already in place, and the government side, which is managed by LTA. If you think that you're going to have a regulation and it benefits the citizens, I'm sure during the transitional period, if it is established a law to undo this contract between this, for the lack of better word, between this small company and Orange is going to lose some money, and to remove that term away from Orange, the government will have to give something to Orange. I think that's why he talked about it in one of the negotiations. But I think with the government taking ownership, puts the government in a better position to not just to regulate the current players. Why if Gentel pop up tomorrow? You can never tell. Gentel will come with a happy food. And this is not good. It's sad. I remember when not Orange, when Second came, it was as though Commune, it was Labor Cell, singing as actors. Thinking, second, personally, I felt over these guys. But it's a business strategy, so you could have Gem Cell, Star Cell, you could be like the GSN, until it goes and it exists. But tomorrow in the morning, the whole country will know that Gem Cell is around. There's a new player that's warming up. You have to get in the field. If the LTA doesn't position herself with all these regulations, you could have more players coming in the field and makes LTA very spineless. So I think these regulations your points are very, taken particularly with the issue of the transitional period. I think it's very key. Then the technology, alternative. Now we are focused on the short codes. And you said something. When the MNO tomorrow transition to WhatsApp,
yes,
or other platforms, which I think is a wake-up call for us to see. Now we're talking about the numbers, but so we have to position ourselves that if the MNOs or technology, not even the MNOs, technology could push us, to something else. So it's good to.
The thing about the USSD code, and he knows this better than I do, is that even if you don't have a data connection to get WhatsApp, you can still transact. So even in markets where they have much more developed markets, USSD is still, so we don't see it happening in the medium term. And even if we talk IP traffic, we are already beginning to consider that the traffic, whether VAS or other traffic, may move to IP. So these are things, but your points are well taken, and I'm hoping that you could make a written submission, send us an email, summarize your points. We need to consider it so that these regulations we are putting together consider everything. Okay, please.
The last one. I needed clarity around something. So if you look at the non-telecommunication services slide, the non-telecom slide, the aggregator and us, we set up as a platform.
Yes.
We set up, no, the one before this. Good.
This one?
We set up as platforms. So if an aggregator comes in and take a short code to set up as an IRT business, national returns business, that same short code, they maximize it, not only IRT. They do other services on that short code. So mobile money, for example, on the platform. So I do mobile banking, I do music, I do IRT, all on one single short code. I need clarity around that space. So will I pay for just my short code, one license, and I can offer all these services?
No.
We are not going to charge me for each service. I offer the same short code.
No. So there are two regulations: the numbers regulations and the national numbering plan require that you apply for each number individually, and you must tell the LTA what you want to use that number for.
So that's different from your license. Your license is there, but you apply for this.
Yes. So if you apply for a number and you say, I want to use this number for voice services, or I want to use this number for the USSD remittances or whatever services, that is the service you must use the number for. You would be in violation of the regulation if you use that number for any other service. Okay. And there's also the issue of extensions. There's also the issue of USSD extensions. So, say you acquired as a VAS provider 555, and you decide to use 555 star 555 hash 1
to save cost
star.
Yes.
Yes. So the regulations on VAS have some concerns around that and some restrictions on what you can do with that.
So please, is that captured? Because to save cost, we do extensions for the short codes.
It depends on what those extensions are for.
No, but the regulation takes that into consideration. It's in the regulation.
Okay.
The document and stuff. But I believe if I've been coming a little bit, you know, as you were speaking, and rightfully, I think Lily almost addressed you as the network operator. At a certain point in time, I wasn't clear who you were speaking. You said you were speaking for the fintech, but I didn't have that feeling. And I thought, and I believe you should actually. In the first place, I think you were not here when I spoke earlier. And the commissioner alluded to that. The numbers we give to Orange and Lone Star, and I'm intentionally saying Orange and Lone Star, they say Orange money.
I understand.
Thank you. Those numbers, for some reasons, have been transferred to their subsidiary. I mean, legally they're separate, but they're legally subsidiary. And in no time, you came and you got 2 million customers. It won't go. The fintechs here, they have to fight to get those numbers. So that's the first advantage that you have. So that's why we want to separate the network from fintech. The second thing that you said is it has to do with your resource allocation. And I think Mr. Elliott kind of addressed that some of the burden now will be given to the value-added service provider, which could actually it will be because you're fintech. So some of that work will be given away, but fintech to fintech, this is where you're talking about, because people, I'm not sure whether while we're talking a lot about fintech because most of you are here, I'm not sure whether they're interested in doing advertising, integration. They're more interested in your 2 million customers you're going to save up process. And not to take it away from you. There's one big mistake the incumbent, have. They always think that, when I get these people, they will eat from me. Instead of seeing this, and always, especially in telecom, has happened from the market left from fixed to mobile and so forth. They are always afraid when you give access to others, the market, your share will be smaller. No, usually, even if your share will be the same, but innovation that is brought, there are a lot of things BNB does, E-Wally does, Tiffany, I think Cola
Cash.
These people have things that you would not get, not on a short term. And even if you have, your application will be too bulky. So there will be different kinds of services. But guess what? Some of your 2 million subscribers need to use that service. Now you'll be pretty much forcing them to use maybe a product that you have that is not entirely what they want. So I think the general idea here, just like when I'm calling with phone, is our role. So I could be calling you, you're here, there's an MTN tower, but there's no cell phone tower. And I'm somewhere else calling you with my Lone Star number. So I should be able to call you even though you don't have Lone Star tower here. So this is where the interconnection thing comes in. So we want to achieve the same with all other services. So once somebody calls from, or somebody is taking a service from one operator or one service provider, they should be able to have access to it. And where the commissioner was talking about the number of resource, which is ours. And interestingly, at a bank, when a bank creates your account number, they charge you for it. And in fact, you pay every month, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, maintenance fee, they call it. Now, you came, I'm sorry, I'm thinking like you. You came and you got 2 million customers, and LTA is not even aware that you have those customers.
I know.
Okay, now I'm just saying.
But typically you don't have access to them. But in short, what we are saying is build your open API so other people can send messages back and forth. So if I have a piece of service, because on your side it's pretty much to say credit and debit.
So we have a big business opportunity to float it. We want aggregators to build open API solutions for us. We've had 2 so far. We're waiting for 2 more. Then we'll do an RFP out of it. And then there will be a program of it. So it's challenging for open API solutions.
Yes. All right, so those are my comments.
Yes.
I have a couple of questions.
This is Tiffany.
Tiffany, yes. Okay, first, I wanted to understand if any kind of study has been done around what kind of traffic uptake this is going to be on the MNOs. I suspect that once this is issued, there's going to be a lot of people interested and more traffic coming, and I can foresee that the MNOs might have some pushback on what this means for their networks. And does this have any impact on, quality of service and so on, and if that has been looked into? And I also want to understand if, for example, we are a small fintech just getting started. Let's say we start by using an aggregator and we acquire a short code through an aggregator, but we eventually grow to a point where we need to migrate to, having our own integration. Do we get to maintain that short code, or does the short code now belong to that aggregator and then we have to now get a new short code in the transition?
I want to start with that last question. If you have no license from the LTA, okay, and you get your number through the aggregator, that aggregator owns that number. That number is the aggregator's. He's leasing it to you for a period of time. If you fail to renew that lease with the aggregator, the number reverts to him. If he fails to renew it with the LTA, the number reverts to the LTA. So on that question, it's something that between you and the aggregator, whoever, you have to be clear. Because the person who applies and who pays the fees for that number is the aggregator, not you. We don't know you for that number. We know you in the sense that the aggregator needs to tell us that he has assigned that number to you. Okay? But that's the limit of it from that point of view. Your question about traffic, volume, and things, I don't know if Henry or Joe want to take this.
Well, let's talk about the part about it has not been studied, but basically, when you look at the service providers' traffic, the bulk of it is data, and as we have been moving to 4G, LTA has been providing spectrum and to meet the quality of service, and thereby has been extended. So on the issue of spectrum resource, a resource needed for financial services, it's more like text, so it's small. So what would be required from the MNOs would be more like servers, a licensing capacity, and I think basically based on a market situation, they can actually upgrade their service. But when it comes to resources like spectrum in their network, majority of the real data on that network is for broadband. So the other one, which is actually what you do as financial service, more like texting, so you don't take a lot of space on the resource.
It's a very small part of the overall traffic on the network. This USSD and SMS is minimal.
That's what we say. But
Yeah.
If they may just have a whole thing in Nigeria, it was a big thing in Nigeria with USSD, and the MNOs were fighting the banks over the same USSD and the amount of traffic that was coming through it. So being that it's becoming open, I would think that it could become something.
I think that fight was mainly overpricing.
Well, yeah, but pricing affects how much investment you make in the infrastructure. But I think that point is actually well noted, and there's also an economy.
I think that there's something, the point she raised. In other jurisdictions, we look at the number of users and the time of use of the short code. Because if you as a fintech grow your business to a certain number of users over a certain period, to lose that short code to the original owner is very punitive. So in other jurisdictions, we consider the number of users on the short code and the period of use before we decide on that. So it will be interesting to look at that because she built a business, get 1 million subscribers on that short code for 5 years. To ask her to see it to the original owner of the short code is very punitive. So we need to consider that.
We hope we can get these comments from all of you, so that we can consider all of these issues.
And just before,
Yes, yeah.
here, one more. In terms of the technology, because it sounds like, is it clear where we're sitting on the technology in terms of the MNO readiness to, us going through an aggregator or connecting directly to them, open APIs or not? Are we technologically even prepared for the shift that we are?
This is the reason for the transition. And we've been talking to the MNOs. And the MNOs would like this to go away. They don't want to necessarily see this. It's a change, and change is hard. Change is difficult. So as we said, if during the transition or at the end of the transition, upon effectiveness, if the aggregators with the capability, technical and otherwise, okay, to handle the traffic, if they're not there, we need to make a decision in the transition about MNO, if you've been handling this, perhaps continue to handle this until things develop.
Will you put a timeline on that? Because like
We
you
will
said,
at that point in time.
okay.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. David, so,
from?
Okay, BME. Okay, so I want to appreciate this forum and the initiative from the Telecom Authority. I would have appreciated if this draft regulation was shared with us before this meeting actually, so that it will give us more insight into what we want to discuss and provide us opportunity to let our talk very well and come and present it here. However, it's a good idea, and we've strived for this a long time, and thankfully, it's coming to fruition. So really appreciate that. So for some of us, we are sitting in a very difficult position. I see Jeba looking at me and Max. It's difficult for me to forget because we have a very good relationship with them. Sincerely speaking, we don't have issues with them. Our business has not really considered USSD code to be sincere. We focus more on the app and services that we can render through that. However, what will benefit the majority is very important, not because BNB does have a relationship with them, no, but what will benefit the market and the components that will bring to the market. Not necessarily targeting anybody, like, oh, we want to, no, we are not targeting anybody, and I want to believe LTA also is not targeting anybody. A few comments and questions I have. The first one is about when you represent, you mentioned the MNOs are not eligible for VAS. And then MNOs are not eligible to apply for VAS license, right? So I want to ask, what happens to mobile money?
So mobile money is not an MNO. We consider them to be a VAS provider. We consider them to be a VAS provider. We look to them to get a VAS license.
Okay, so do you look at the two companies' relationship?
The central bank has a regulation on mobile money, and the central bank requires that the GSM part be separated from the financial services part. So in essence, mobile money, Orange Money is a separate company from Orange, Liberia.
We are big mobile financial services, we are separate entities.
Thank you.
So the second one is the transition period. We talk about 3 months. So for some of us that have, I just want to paint a scenario whereby we have an existing integration directly with these telcos, and we have after all of this ratification and all of that, this regulation is signed into law, and we have to comply within 3 months, as you have said. Now, some of these integrations or this relationship handshake may not happen in 3 months. I'll give you an instance. You have to look at the contracts, between you and the telco, you have to look at the, what do you call it, business model. You talk about 20% local ownership of the business. Now, there are some businesses that are 100% owned by a corporation that are not local. Now, you have to look at legal procedure to get a local investor to invest 20%, like I said, in that business, which may not happen in 3 months. That's one part of it. The second part is whereby you have integrated with telco directly, and your service is running, and we have to implement this new regulation. What happens to the time of changing the agreement we have with them, and the time of going 100% with what you have? By the time I'm changing the agreement we have with them, what happens to the service? Are we going to suspend it until we? Okay.
So let me answer that question right away. Say you have an agreement with Orange Money, and they're providing you service now. You don't have to change it. If Orange Money gets a license from the LTA, a vast license from the LTA, if he's giving you a number already now, he needs to reapply for that number and pay the LTA for that number he has given you. Then nothing changes for you.
And also, if it is not already occupied, because there may be some things across network, that same number would be applicable on MTN network.
Yes.
Okay. So the next one to ask is the 5 years license and annual 5,000. What do you call it?
Yes,
license fee.
Yes.
So the 5,000 will be paid annually, or it covers for the 5 years period.
It's annual.
So the license is active for 5 years, but you do every year for 5,000.
So that 5-year license is actually 25,000. You are paying in 5,000 a year.
What I want to, you see what I'm saying is, you see what I'm saying? It's high. It's high. Very high. I'm saying very high.
Spread it. I said there's no button.
Oh, did I say that? It's very high. So, on that, that's why I want to know whether the 5,000 is for the 5 years or the 5,000 is annual. So we need to look at that in-house, LTA. Please look at that, because if you want to support these local innovators that come with content, they may not have the volume right now, but they have the idea, and it will take a period of time to grow that idea.
We don't expect that small innovator to need a license. We expect him to go through an aggregator who would have the license.
Now, we have Orange saying,
we expect Orange Money to get a license.
We have
Orange Money and 5,000 and Orange Money, they are not in conflict.
we are talking in context of the market.
Yeah.
Orange just put out a bid openly here for people that can develop aggregator platforms. In the event, how long will it take us to get aggregator platform? What will not happen to somebody that have an idea that can really work? Though it will take time to grow it. 5 years, maybe minimum 3 years. And you say you should pay 5,000, right? We need to look at that. I understand 5,000 is not an issue for people like MTN. It may not be an issue, but for a startup, it might be an issue. Because there are other costs that they need to, and I'm very sure, pretty sure, in the next 3 years they will be in negative because they are growing the business. You understand? So we need to look at that based on the cost of that. For me, I don't know. We don't have meetings, but I would just suggest a minimum amount, maybe $1,000.
Please provide the comments.
Yeah, okay. We are going to do that. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about is the short code now. Is that particular short code? It was debated just now about services to be rendered on a particular short code. Now, and I will get a fintech that have a few services. If I take BNB for example, we have 1 or 2 or 3 of services. And I get the soft code, maybe by now, maybe because of this new regulation, I may be interested in going for soft code now. Now, all of my services are on one application. One. Everything we do is on the BNB app. We don't have 2, we don't have 3. It's just one, but there are different services there. So in my application, I let you know we are doing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 services. And immediately you dial my code, the session opens you up to all of my services.
To your menu?
Yes, all of my.
Yes, that's a completely different thing.
Okay.
Because, let me just clarify, for instance, you are into financial services, correct? You have a license from the central bank to do financial services. So, if you came to the LTA and to do for this thing, you will be restricted in anything you're doing. It must be in line with your CBL financial services. So you got a short code, 555. If your customer dialed that short code, and then my question, the comment about the extensions. So 555, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those are all extensions of that short code. So access remittances, access debit services, access payment, whatever. Whatever those financial services that you are authorized to do, they can all be on that one short code on your extensions. But if you took that same 555 and you started providing music services for it somewhere else, then we have an issue. Or you took it and used it for something else that you didn't. There's a problem. Okay? But extensions, in terms of extensions of the number to indicate the menu, that is not a problem. But like everything we are seeing here, we are looking to you to help us refine these regulations. So you are in the business, we are not. There are aspects of the business that the specialists sitting at this table may not be aware of. So the purpose of this gathering and what we've been having is to hear from you and tell us this will not work. This will not work at all because of this and this reason. Tell us, please. Tell us, let's go back in our little closet, look at it, and see what we can come up with. We want your business to work. We don't want to disrupt it.
Okay, lastly,
yes.
My last comment will be, Honorable Chairman, yesterday I was not in the meeting with the IFC and all of that. Our team were there. But if we look at all of the services offered in the nation today, 75% of them are financial based. The reason is because establishing brick and mortar branches for banks is no longer visible. It's no longer profitable. Every day they pull out from counties and all of that. The only solution we have today is mobile money. Do you get it? So all of this regulation, I can tell you, in the next 2, 3, 4 years, it will be all based on financial inclusion products and services. People will be coming up with different solutions to help people do their financial transaction. Now, what I'm suggesting here is that institution whereby we have been on this for a long time with the central bank, but now LTA is coming in our face like we are becoming visible. This is a good thing. You know, this is by the way. This is by the way. Please don't crucify me for the day I saw his name at LTA. I was, these are my friends. I was happy. I was sad and I said, well, how did you manage? So that was by the way. So what I want to suggest is still whereby the LTA and the Central Bank of Liberia work on the national switch. You see, 75% of this problem we want to solve. Sincerely speaking, we solve at the national switch. Yes. And me, as a fintech, I will not go to Orange. I will not go to LTA. Yeah. I will go to Central Bank. Central Bank and LTA are together. Immediately I connect with Central Bank. Through LTA, I have access to it. He has 2 million, he has 4 million. 6 million maybe. Yes. You get it? Yes. It's about it. I wrote it down. So if now that you are coming up into a business, you want to be an active player. If you can join Central Bank of Liberia to actualize this particular one, I'm telling you, 75% of our problem, if not 80%, is gone. And everybody will be happy. Everybody will be happy in the sense that you will have access, both the key players in telco and whatever, then we have access to everybody without even having to do integration with anybody. We have it in other markets that is working for them. You understand? Ghana is there, Nigeria is there, we can see. I have not seen telco, business like this, go to telco directly. No. They go to NIBS, National Integrated Payment System, NIBS. They just go, once you are connected, all the database of telephone numbers are there. Mobile money by default is there. You just do your transaction. So if we're able to do that, I'm sure we are.
David, on top of that, I have a very important question I raised yesterday. I'm wondering how they are going to implement the bus law without interoperability. But what they are saying is that if you give me a single short code, it must work everywhere for my network. How would that be implemented without interoperability?
Yeah.
That's a question I asked yesterday. I didn't get the answers.
Yeah,
and it's a very valid question David has raised. How do we implement this without interoperability? Because my short code must work across, but today I can't work across.
Yes, very good. So, I told you, I'm making the point that you have 2 million subscribers. So now, as David said, you have 5 persons. Okay. No, pretty much, because I also want your subscribers to send money to any other account. So it's not, so I'm approaching you now as a fintech. But David, let me just give you some comfort. Actually, yesterday we should have signed an MOU with other program with the central bank. We are working on the MOU that will strengthen the relationship and ensure that we both are involved in regulating the financial services entities. And one of our key tasks there is to ensure interoperability. It's going to be a requirement. And the good thing, there are 2 levels. You can do that completely on the software level. Yeah, at the CBL, but you can also, in the interim, we also the support we have with World Bank, it's going to be 2 years before this green light. So our intervention will actually accelerate this process, because if we get involved now and be quiet, because there are just 2 networks. So the fintechs will be integrated much earlier than the banks. So at this point, we are trying to push to make sure that the both entities are regulated fintechs. And one of the key reasons we're doing it is interoperability, security, and access for all. Right? Everybody has
if the law can really support us, because it's a solution existing already.
Yeah.
The short code rate.
Yeah.
I need credit and debit from my competitor to offer the service to Liberia. They are giving me only credits. I want them to give me credit and debits, and they get credits and debits, and it's available to Liberians. But I don't have the backing of the law. We've written to a central bank, had meetings around it just last week. We visited again, it's still not open. So if we get the endorsement of the law to get that open for credit and debit for both partners, it opens the system up for everybody.
I don't think there's a law against it.
There's no law against it. There's a will to do it. We're able to do it from.
Thank you. Sorry, lastly, I want to ask this question. I don't know if you have a separate engagement with banks. If you have a separate engagement with banks, because the vast aspect of it, I'm sure banks are also interested. No, it's not that they are doing it. They are doing it. If bank is doing push and pull, that's vast, right?
Yeah.
So the reason is because I don't see banks in this room. That's why I'm asking.
No, we met with the Bankers Association separately, and we had a very good engagement when there were representatives at the highest level, at the MD level, from all the banks in the room. And so we discussed, we told them basically what we just told you. And I think the sort of reactions we got from them is what we are hearing from you, that it's long overdue, it's something that should happen. And so they're all happy about it. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Julius will be from Ateco. The regulation takes effect within 90 days or 3 months. Let us say around October of this year. And then actually there are MNOs that have already gone to work and signed or have an agreement with a particular institution, giving them access to a short code. And then during this time, they were asked to pay a particular amount that exceeds what the LTA comes up with today. And then within that same agreement, it is required that that institution pays something around $10,000 monthly, $20,000 monthly, and if agreed to it, it's been sealed up. This agreement takes effect after 90 days beginning now, or October, November. But that agreement between the service provider, a particular service provider, and the institution is still ongoing, and that institution is required to pay a particular amount based upon the contract that was reached upon between the both parties. How does the LTA handle such a situation? One. Number two.
Let me start with that one.
Yeah.
I thought we handled that query, but just to respond, that we can't legislate for each and every circumstance. So what we commit to do is to have a help team or tax team available to, in particular cases, to resolve it. The idea is not to do harm to anyone here. It's not to do harm to the MNOs, it's not to do harm to VAS providers, it's not to do harm to consumers. So in a particular circumstance, the LTA will be available to help out, to help you, to help all these firms work through these issues. But I think Councilor Toma expressed the legal view that if you have a contract and there are usually provisions in that contract that whether it's force majeure or new issues come about, then the new issue will take effect. So those legal matters and those commercial, contractual matters, if can be resolved on a case-by-case basis as the idea, because there's no way we can foresee each and every circumstance. I hope that.
Secondly, are we going to publish a uniform pricing system?
No, the LTA doesn't get involved in the commercial activities. What we can do, those licensees that we've declared to be dominant, they have an obligation to provide the LTA their pricing information. We try to make sure that their price is based on their costs plus a reasonable markup. That's what we do, but the commercial agreements are not something that the LTA would typically get involved.
However, if it is determined that there is a dispute, a settlement dispute that requires the regulatory authority, authority of the regulator in dispute settlement, you can bring it to the LTA's attention, and at that point, the LTA will be acting its quasi-judicial function to determine the dispute on the mutual agency level.
Okay, so in simple English? in simple English, we have the authority to set a cap if we feel that the prices being offered is way above the cost. I think the director made mention of the cost. So at that point, you need to complain. So that's where the judicial comes in. And then we will investigate if we feel that they may be abusing the leverage they have. Then we can set a cap and say you can charge up to that. All right.
Yes, sir.
Yes. So Wilson Manning from
Pardon?
Wilson Manning from E1. So I'm specifically concerned on interoperability. So last year in November we attended a meeting of Consultation with Central Bank directly, and there were some of our partners from World Bank that were represented in that meeting. Then the issue of interoperability allowing small fintech institutions to integrate with other companies' work will actually keep. And then they set up a time bound for that. So that which brought about this NEPS, the National Electronic Payment Switch. So that was enable each and every institution to, let's say, compulsorily operate or have your services being on another platform. But that meeting ended last year in November, and we are yet to see some of the progress that was being made within that direction. And we always come together with major players, and then they will make open their APIs that, oh yeah, we are open. This is our API, you can come on board, we can interoperate. But at the end of the day, these things doesn't come to fruition. So now what I'm driving at is that, does the LTA placing a time bound on this process that going forward from this time to this time, fintech companies and that of other mobile services provider can be able to interoperate within this time period? Because if it's just being open again, my fear is that we might come back and have the same conversation and then just having the same thing around the cycle. So how are we going to achieve this if it is time bound, or we're just going to talk about it and put a lot of measures and have another conversation?
No, it is time bound. And we say it's a minimum 3-month period, transition period. So whatever the actual period would be, the Board of Commissioners will determine. And when the regulations are issued, the board will issue an order indicating what that time period will be for the regulations' effectiveness. After they are effective, when you speak of interoperability, what these regulations talk about is your integration with another service provider. And that is time bound. So the time frame in our regulations is within 30 days, he must respond to you. If he doesn't respond to you, you need to complain to the LTA. I don't know if that answers your question. So every step, the obligations on different players who have dominance, market power, is that they must respond in a specific time period. Okay. Similarly, the LTA, the regulations require that certain players who are dominant must provide to the LTA their tariffs. How much will you charge? Give it to us once a year, tell us what you will charge. So there are many obligations on these people to ensure that it doesn't just drag on. I hope I've responded. Is that it? We have lunch, so Lafayette will take it from there if there are. So please, this is the email address. Please, someone said they didn't have access to the documents. Send us an email address. We'll send you a link to the Google Drive folder so you can have access to the actual regulations. There are many other provisions in them that we mentioned here today. Okay? And let's hear from you. Please send us an email with the comments you made here, and so we can take them into consideration.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Billy Elliott, Director of Strategy at the Telecommunications Authority, and the VAS team for that beautiful presentation, and our potential stakeholders. Thank you for that very interactive question and answer period. On this note, we now take our closing remark from Honorable Patrick Conner, Acting Commissioner, Universal Access and Consumer, LTA.
All right, let me just say how pleased we are on behalf of the Liberia Telecommunications Authority for your participation. We want to thank you so kindly for coming. I thought it was a very productive session, and be assured that your contributions here today will be looked at by our technical team. I want to thank our technical team for the kind of quality of work you put in to get these two regulations. And we also want to thank you for your contributions. Please take advantage of the email address to further send your contributions to our team. Thank you so kindly. Lunch is served.
Focus on Liberia. here at the Colony Hotel where the Liberia Telecommunications Authority is hosting a meeting with stakeholders of the telecommunications. My name is Gwendolyn Dorado, so thanks for watching.
Commissioners, Chair, the launch is right in the body across there. So please stay alone.